Hello everybody, Sunday Adelaja here. Welcoming you to another class today where we are discussing about the black people and who they are and their achievements. So are black people cursed? Are Africans cursed? Far from it. Because by the time you discover what Africans have done and their greatness and their achievements, you will know very fast that Africans are not cursed at all. And that's why I would like to recommend this, my book, to you, How Africans Brought Civilization to Europe. And I put Europe just because, I needed to make it intriguing. But really, Africans brought civilization to the whole world. And it's one of the greatest civilizations that they built is what I'm going to be talking about today. So let's go and talk about Asia. We are still in Asia. We are not in Europe yet, but we are still in Asia. And we are going to talk about the greatest civilization that Africans built in Asia. Okay, so the topic of today, go and share the message, everybody. Go share the message. The topic of today is the greatest Asian civilization by Africans. The greatest Asian civilization is by Africans. The greatest Asian civilization is built by Africans. So, and the civilization is called Sumer. That's what they call it in English now. But in the Bible, that civilization was called Shinar. But now it's, the English people call it Sumer. So let's go to Sumer. Some scientists said the Sumerian civilization, which was in, this is another name for it in the Bible, Mesopotamia. I think in Mesopotamia also, I think we have that Mesopotamia also in the Bible. I think so. Because that is, I think it was called Mesopotamia when where God called Abraham from. I don't know if they use that word. I think they just use Ur, because Ur was the capital of Mesopotamia at that time. It was the capital of Sumer. So I think they only use Ur in Genesis. But anyway, so Ur is the capital of Sumer and is the capital of Mesopotamia, which is still the same civilization. So some scientists said this Sumerian civilization is Mesopotamia. In Mesopotamia was the oldest, but the oldest documented date found in Africa was 4,236 before Christ. So some people were thinking, there are some scientists that thought that civilization was the oldest, but really, by documents, the oldest civilization in the world that was found was the Ethiopian civilization in Asia, in Africa. And by history and by the documentation, you could find that it is the ancient civilization of the Ethiopians that moved upward and started the Egyptian civilization, and then moved down there to start the other civilizations, including the Sumer civilization. As at that time, the calendar was already in use in ancient Egypt, which was Africa, because ancient Egypt was African. At the same time, the most conservative Sumerologists date the start of the first dynastic period of Sumer not earlier than 2750 BC. And in Africa, the oldest was dated by 4,236. So you see, Africa was already existing 2 centuries before the start of the dynasty and civilization of Sumer. So if you want to know where it is, that is Sumer right there. Sumer right there. You see the ore? So that old map is Sumer civilization. The grain, you see the grain? Those are the main cities of Sumer. And the Ur was their capital. So they had Ur, Uruk, Kush, Lagash. That whole place was where the civilization of the Sumerians were. Similar to Egypt, Sumerian civilization and neighboring civilization of Elam. Elam is the Persian civilization now, are branches of the center of civilization situated in Ethiopia. But the two of them were also started by black people. The Elam civilization and the Sumerian civilization. That was after Ethiopia, and after Egypt. Extraordinary resiliency and unprecedented scale of Ethiopian civilization gave start not only to Egyptian but also to the Sumerian civilization. Ancient Sumer in the Bible, known as Shinar, was the center of civilization in the early East Asia, thriving in the 3rd millennium before Christ. Sumer set a tone and gave direction to subsequent kingdoms and empires. So this is the city of Ur, where Abraham was called from. And they discovered this was archaeological discovery and recreation of it. Often connected to Chaldean and Babylon, Chaldea and Babylon, it covered the valleys of Tigris and Euphrates rivers, a distance of 300 miles from the Persian Gulf to Akkad. That's what we had shown you. You see. While Sumer's cultural achievements are appreciated, an important question of its ethnic composition is often left aside. Naturally, it would be silly to state that Sumerians were homogeneous in their composition. Not necessarily only black people were there. Maybe there were other nationalities also, because it was a crossroad market and commercial center. So there might be composition of other people that belong to a certain, not just to a certain racial type, but it is quite evident that the bright light of the Sumerian civilization can be connected only to arrival of black immigrants from the Nile River in Africa. Okay, this is one of the sculptures that is supposed to be a Sumerian divinity. It has the features of lips and nose of black man. Concerning the connection of the Nile Valley and Sumer, anthropologist CHEIKH ANTA DIOP lists the following arguments. The Bible supports the idea that Sumerians were black migrants from the Nile Valley. So how do we see the confirmation that Sumerians were black in the Bible? Well, let's go to the Bible. In Genesis chapter 10, 8 to 10, it says Cush, which is black. That is the origin of all black people. So Cush is the father of Nimrod. So Nimrod is the civilization of black men. And Nimrod is the one that built Babel, the Tower of Babel. The greatest civilization of his time was built by Nimrod. And he was a black man because his father was black. So he began to be a mighty one on the earth. Nimrod was the greatest one in his generation. That's why they say he was the mighty one on the earth. So this is the story of black people. The black people began civilization. Even Bible confirms it. So civilization started with the arrival or the greatness of Nimrod, which is the one that started the civilization that we call the black civilization. And it was the greatest of the civilization on the whole earth. So the Bible confirms this, that the civilization of black Africans was the greatest in the world, because Cush is black Africans. That means Ethiopia black, and he was the father of Nimrod, who built the largest civilization. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore, it is said, like Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord, and the beginning of his kingdom was Babel. So look at it. This is according to the Bible. The black man built the Babel, and we know that the Tower of Babel and the Babylonian Empire, Erech, Assad, Salmon, and the land of Shinar. And Shinar is the same as Sumer. So all those kingdoms were built and started by Nimrod. Then in Genesis 11 verse 2, it talks about Shinar again. And it came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelled there. So the black people hosted the Jews and the Israeli nation at a point in their history. But this is before Abraham, but this is just talking about the history of mankind. Genesis 14 also says, verse 1 and 9, talks about Shinar. I'm just trying to tell you that Shinar is one of the greatest civilizations. And so this was all a long time before God called. So there was this civilization before God started this civilization of Israel. Because a lot of Christians always talk about the Bible being the history of mankind being 6,000 years. But that is not the history of the world. That is the history of the Jews. That is the chronology of the Jews. And you see, but before the Jewish nation was created, before Abraham was called, see, there was the civilization from where it was called from. And that civilization has lived long time before the birth of Abraham and before before the birth of civilization and before the creation of the Jewish nation. So there were civilizations, according to science and archaeology and anthropology, long time. And even the very land from where Abraham was called, there was civilization there. There was civilization. So that civilization is the civilization of Shinar, where people dwell and people move. So people, according to that place, we just read, that scripture there talks about, where is the scripture? Talks about, I'm moving forward. Talks about people, humanity, and it came to pass as they journeyed. So humanity journeyed from the place where their language was scattered. So that is the story here. Their language was scattered in this place. So they, they came. Let's start from the Noah. From after Noah, they scattered all over the earth, and then they got to this place where Nimrod was their leader, and formed this great civilization of Shinar. So there was this civilization, and here we're also reading about it. And it came to pass in the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar. So there was life, and Ariel, king of Elazar, long before the time of Abraham. Laomer. So we cannot just say it's 3,000 or 6,000 years that the whole of history of mankind. No, it's not. It cannot be true. The king of Elam, you see, he's talking. The Elam is also a confirmation of what we said, that it's just Persia besides Shinar, and Tidal, king of nations, against Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, Tidal, king of nations, Amraphel, king of Shinar, and Ariel, king of Elazar, 4 kings against 5. So it's all history. I'm just talking to you about the history that Sumer was already there in history as a civilization, and it came from wherever the humanity started from. That is where the whole civilization came from, and Sumer also is as a result of that, coming from Nimrod. Epos on Gilgamesh, one of the greatest work of literature of ancient East, describes the god of Enlil as a pastor of black people. That is their literature that calls this man a leader, as the pastor or the leader of great black people. Identity of names of deities in Sumer and African mythology, they were the same. The story, the names, and the history of Sumer and African in their myths, in their stories. According to Roman historian Diodorus of Sicily, Egyptians consider Chaldeans, Sumerians, descendants, a colony of Egyptian priest astronomer. You see, so even the Egyptians recognize and the greatness of this empire. There are similarities between ancient multi-level houses of worship of Mesopotamia and Iran, ziggurats, and step pyramids of Africa. So it's the same, because it's, why do they call Sumeria and others colony of Egypt, of Africa, of Ethiopia? Because they went to start it, and when you start a kingdom, they are under your rulership for some time before you become independent. The very name Sumerians translate as black-headed. So that's the meaning of Sumeria. Sumer, black people, black-headed, black hair. One of the prominent personalities of Sumer was Gudea, an Africanoid ruler of the city-state of Lagash. So one of their most prominent rulers is being called an African. During his rule, the deity Ainu that had an identical counterpart in Africa became a supreme deity of Sumer. Thanks to a number of inscriptions, when they build their monuments, they always write things. And so inscriptions, it was possible to recreate information on how Gudea conducted conquests that led to conquering of Susa and most of Elam. Afterwards, residents of Susa and Elam came to Lagash to help him build a temple for his god. Gudea's god, as we already know, was Anu, whose name is found almost everywhere where black people are found. So the same name. It's quite interesting that despite a general lack of stone in Mesopotamia, Gudea had numerous personal statues made of black diorite rock. By this, he wanted to point out to his descendants a resolution of a dilemma concerning his origin. So he wanted to make sure that people know his origin, which is black, leaving his trademarks made of stone that clearly indicated his African roots. Enki was an important and interesting figure in the pantheon of Sumerian gods. It was considered that one of the lands that Enki most cared about was Meluk country. It was a country of sailors that exported furniture, copper, gold, plantain, lapis lazuli, and carnelian mineral. Meluku, known as the Black Land, and Sumer, literally the land of blackheads, had close ties. During times following the Sumerian civilization, Meluku was often mentioned as a place of black people. Its geographic location is determined by contemporary scientists to be either in Ethiopia or in Harappa, territory of India and Pakistan. Both regions were settled by black people. So look at this, for example. It's because that territory, Sumer, is now the modern day Iran. It's part of Iran now. But if you look at it, look at the people, some of them are still left. Some of them are still left. Even though, things have changed for all over centuries, hundreds of centuries ago, but still you can see clearly here that these people are Africans. It's going to be very difficult to dispute this, that these were Africans, even though they are the modern people living in that territory. They still look like black people, despite all the mixture over the ages. As a British Egyptologist, Gerard Massey notes, primitive Chaldeans, a later name of Sumerians and Babylonians, were known to Greeks also as Sapphians. So they were the same that the Bible calls Chaldeans. The name Sapphians was a synonym to Ethiopians, who were descendants of Cepheus, the king of Ethiopia. Okay, you see. These are historians confirming this. The ancient black Babylonians differed from the white depicted with long beards. They were defeated by Sargon of Akkad, ruled approximately 2316 to 2261 BC. These particular Sumerians were called blackheads. It is known that Chaldeans advanced very much in astronomy. They observed 4 satellites of Jupiter and 7 satellites of Saturn. A local astronomer, Naburimanu, determined duration of a year very accurately, being mistaken only by 26 minutes and 55 seconds. Wow. Another mathematician and astronomer, Kidinu, determined time of eclipses so accurately that contemporary scientists were able to reach the same level of accuracy only several decades ago. In Mesopotamia, city-state of Kish, Sumerians have built a castle that consisted of hundreds of rooms and in size ascended the French Versailles that was built thousands of years later. As we can see, it took Europeans a long time to catch up with development of the civilization built by Africans. The English explorer of Africa, Harry Johnston, described Elamite Sumerians neighbors as representatives of the Negroid race with frizzy hair, African eyes, and thick lips convinced him that a Negroid element had been present in Babylonia. Plus, archaeological excavations convinced Professor Alfred Adon that a proof existed of Babylonians having had Cushite, Ethiopian blood. Even the first archaeologists who found remains of Sumerians called them Cushites. The American professor William Perry also referred to myths, legends, and traditions, language, and writing system that indicate that Sumerians have African origin. The English Egyptologist Henry Hall considered them Dravidians who had migrated from India. Later, we will assure ourselves also of Dravidians' African root. So Dravidians too are Africans. So these are different images of that time. Having conducted research on ethnic pedigrees in his work, The Origin of Nations, the English historian George Rawlinson revealed that the author of the biblical book Genesis had depicted unity of Egyptians, Ethiopians, Southern Arabians, and primitive inhabitants of Babylon as members of same ethnic family. The city of Susa, the capital of the neighboring state of Elam in Iranian territory, in its turn was considered by ancient Greeks and Romans to be residence of the legendary king Memnon, a black warrior who was one of the most heroic figures of the Trojan War. At the same time, in Greek mythology, Memnon's father, Tithonus, is the founder of Susa. Memnon's story was one of the most circulated heroic sagas of the ancient world. It was mentioned in the work of Homer, Hesiod, Virgil, Ovid, Pindar, Diodorus of Sicily, Achilles, Pausanias, Strabo, and Apollonius of Tyana. Antigonus of Miletus wrote an epic poem called Ethiopia, in which Memnon was the main hero. According to the legend, Memnon was killed by Achilles, surrounded by a coalition of Greeks when he was defending the Trojan of King Priam. Memnon brought a big army of Ethiopians to defend Troy. Homer perpetuated him in the Odyssey by describing him as godlike and the most beautiful of all. According to results of excavations in Susa conducted by the French archaeologist Marcel de la Foy, a high possibility that the state of Elam had been ruled by a black dynasty was revealed, and based on their facial features, it had been an Ethiopian dynasty. The French archaeologist George Contenier describes Susa as supposedly a product of blending of Cushites and Negroes with relatively flat noses, wide nostrils, significant cheekbones, and thick lips. After Susa was ruined, the black people of Elam remained an important factor in the region. Thus, Herodotus depicts them as foreign military armies used during Greco-Persian wars. These are some of the At that time, the territory of southern Balochistan, eastern Iran, and western Pakistan were known as Gedrosia, country of the black nation. Persian king Cyrus built a winter capital in the restored Susa, and in this town lived the prophet Daniel. Even today, this very place is considered to be the place of Daniel's burial. In the 19th century, George Rawlinson wrote, even today, ancient Susa is known as Khuzestan, the country of Cushites, black. Khuzestan, the country of the black. black people. The Sumerians invented writing, cuneiform script, for which they used sharp reeds to create wedge-like markings on clay tablets. This was the way they wrote. Thus, you could make sure for themselves. That Sumerian culture that become a foundation for development of culture of many nations of the Middle East had African roots. Yep. So that is the greatest civilization that was developed in Asia by black people, and everything pointed to the fact that these are Africans who developed it. And science is not arguing about it, and archaeologists too, anthropologists too. So please, let's go and share this message with as many people as possible. Share. And besides, if you want to join our mentorship program, go to sundaydelajablog.com/mentorship. If you want to come for my training, which is called History Makers Training, HMT, go to the same sundaydelajablog.com/HMT. If you want to get my books, go to the same blog, sundaydelajablog.com/books. If you want to come with us to Nigeria, go to the same blog, sundaydelajablog.com/Nigeria. So share the message, and I have a film that I want to show that will confirm these facts about Sumer civilization. It's going to be a long one, but it's worth watching. Thank you so much. Peace.